We are living in a very unique time in history. The sociologists have called it a crisis season, and you can actually see that in all human history there have been seasons where it has been a critical time. And the time period is actually recorded even by some of the biblical prophets in the Old Testament. The one that does the best job of it is the prophet Isaiah in the 59th chapter. He talks about a time that's called an evil time, an evil day. And one of the characteristics of that time is that truth has fallen in the streets. So in other words, it's a time where things that are true and right, they're twisted and they're turned around, and people lack courage to say and to hold on and to stand for what is true and what is right. Those times in human history, those cycles in human history, they always end with judgment of the society in which it's occurring. We can see that once again, the prophet Isaiah, the generation that he spoke to, they actually wound up going into captivity. The nation of Judah actually did wind up going into captivity because that was the character of that nation at that particular time. We see it through every great kingdom that's ever arisen, that's ever fallen, that there is a time period called an evil time. We actually saw that happen historically in America from 1861 to 1865. In that period of time, of course, we know it as the time of the Civil War, but the reality of it is that an institution called slavery, which was one of the last vestiges of man's cruelty and inhumanity to man in this nation, that was legalized. It came into view as being an unjust system and contrary to the laws of human nature. But it was a multi-billion-dollar industry. And so there was a refusal to give that system up. The system had to go away from the standpoint of the God of history. And so what happened? We had a 4-year war, and eventually that system was destroyed. We're in the same system. We're in the same cycle of history at this moment in time. I think of life and leadership like this. And when I say life and when I say leadership, I'm not talking about external leadership with world leaders and that kind of thing necessarily. I'm talking about leadership on an individual level. If a person wanted to be an effective leader, and certainly anybody that's married is a leader, anybody that has some authority and influence in a family is a leader. But basically, if a person is going to be an effective leader, there are two legs that their leadership platform has to stand on. The first is character, and the second is skill. And we live in a society that values skill in a substantial way. It's one of the reasons that we like athletes. It's one of the reasons that we like entertainers, people that can perform, people that have developed and cultivated skills to a very high level. And there is definitely a place for that. But at the end of the day, the character of the person is going to determine their legacy. And if I don't have a strong character that's built upon a foundation of truth, that's built upon a foundation of being a blessing to humanity, that's built upon the foundation of values that are consistent, values that are sustainable, then with all the skill that I have, my life is going to be filled with frustration. And not only am I going to impact myself in a negative way, but my family and everyone else that is around me. We are seeing that played out on steroids, because the reality of it is leadership is not about going to the highest place for the purpose of the individual. It's not about celebrityship. It is not about having people admire you. It's not about a great platform by which your dreams and aspirations can come true. True leadership is about building others. Leaders are bridges. And the last time I checked, a bridge is a mechanism by which people go from one side of the road to another side that's not possible without that bridge being there. So in other words, I become a bridge for my family. I become a bridge for everyone by demonstrating the character that is necessary, that is sustainable, that is redemptive in any situation. That's what true leadership looks like. Trust is something that really is developed. It's something that grows. And it is one of the characteristics of a person walking in good character. It is the fruit of a person walking in good character. And it's going to be developed as people are committed to doing the right things for the right reasons. And one of the things that I talk about in the book is about how it's so interesting that you can talk to a lot of different people on a lot of different levels. And in most cases, if people are really genuinely honest with you, they will talk to you or they will reveal some things that they're not doing, but that they know they should be doing. And I think everybody has some of those things in their lives. Nobody is perfect. Nobody is doing everything that they're supposed to be doing. But as it pertains to things that really matter in life, for example, the difference between cheating on your taxes and not cheating on your taxes, the difference between using your turn signals and driving in a way that's not going to be a burden to other people or not, the difference between saying things that need to be said and doing things that need to be done when no one's looking, making the right decisions in the work that you're doing. The reality of it is that part of this era that we're living through, difficult times that we're living through, one of the characteristics is that people are not committed to the truth that they know. So they know to do better, but they're not committed to it. And then what happens is you get people that are at the top of the scales in business and in government and in other places that have resources and that have connections, and they are able to create webs and networks of things that are benefiting the few and not the many. And it starts, though, with the individual. It starts with a person looking themselves in the mirror, asking themselves, why am I not committed to doing the things that I already know in my heart that I should be doing? Why am I not committed to being excellent at the things that I should be doing? Why, when I go to do a job, do I just do it to the place where it'll pass and I don't put my heart in it? Why is it that I don't see the opportunity to be excellent in everything that I do? Because it is going to build a stronger foundation for the people that I'm doing it for, but also for myself and my family. It's going to create a system of trust. Why am I not committed to doing that? These are the questions that have to be answered, because the reality of it is the difference between a person who really overcomes and a person who does not is the why they do what they do. So one of the things that I really admire about Dr. Martin Luther King is that in his story, what he wind up doing, number one, was not something that he ever planned to do. I have a belief that preparation meets opportunity. In other words, if a person takes the time to prepare and they are committed to doing the right things and they are working in excellence, that at a certain point in their life, a huge opportunity is going to make itself available for them because they have prepared for that opportunity. It may not necessarily be the opportunity that they were looking for. It could be something different. I'll use an example of an athlete. There's an athlete that many people know by the name of Tim Duncan. He was, in his country, actually a swimmer. And he was a really good swimmer, and he worked at that for a long time. But there was a storm called Hurricane Andrew that took place that hit his nation back in 1992, I believe, and destroyed the facility where he practiced. And so he began to play basketball in the meantime. Well, we know him now as one of the greatest NBA players to ever live. The reality of it is that his preparation as a young man created an opportunity. Another opportunity came as a result of that. And that is precisely what happened with Dr. King, a young man that was extraordinarily diligent in his studies as a young person, graduated at 15 from high school, went on to college, got his doctorate degree, went to theology school, and then got his doctorate degree. And yet, the reality of it is that in the time in which he was living, the civil rights activism came to its fullest place and actually gave birth to the civil rights movement. And he was the appropriate person to actually sit in that seat. And the thing that's really interesting and beautiful about his life is that after a short period of working in that capacity, 1955 is when he really comes onto the world stage. But within a couple of years, he realizes that if I do this thing to its fullest, it could cost me everything. And yet, because he was so desiring to see us as a people move forward, he was willing to pay the price to open the door, to see the doors of opportunity open for us as African Americans. And of course, he eventually did pay the highest price. And so what drove him to do that? It was his understanding of history, his understanding of the fact that we were called as a people to be much greater than the experience we were living out at that particular time. And he became a bridge for a generation of Black people that were able to enter a different reality that didn't exist before he yielded himself in that way. Any person that is interested in hearing more about being an overcomer can find this information in my book, Black Man, A Prophecy of Hope for the Times Ahead. The book can be purchased at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, bookshop.org, Reader House, through the iTunes platform. And there will certainly be more content coming out on this book. I certainly would appreciate any support for those who are subscribed to my social media pages, YouTube and Instagram and Facebook. And I would love to hear from any person who purchased the book and reads it. I can be reached at info@gregldavis.com. Please check out my website as well at gregldavis.com.